Okay, here we are. We're wrapping up Standard 5. So, Standard 5D, you're going to be able to describe Africa and its increasing involvement in global trade. A lot of what we're going to go over in this set of notes is going to be a repeat. So, here we go. Essential understandings. The exportation of slaves and raw materials such as ivory and gold, and the demand for imported goods, which are manufactured goods from Europe, Asia, and the Americas, such as guns and chains, and food products such as corn and peanuts, they began to alter traditional economic patterns in Africa. So the Atlantic slave trade. Sugar and tobacco plantations require a large workforce in order to be profitable. So Europeans had planned on using the Native American population to work these plantations, but because of disease, warfare, and brutal treatment, over 90% of the Native American population died. 99 0. Wow, it's huge. Big number died. Therefore, the Europeans turned to Africa for cheap labor. So here is a map of the slave trade, where the slaves went when they were taken from the west coast of Africa and they were brought over to the Americas. So they show you about 0.5 million were brought to an area around the Carolinas. About 4.5 million were brought to the West Indies. And about 5 million were brought to the Brazil area. Crazy, a lot. And between 1650 and 1860, it is approximated that 10 to 15 million enslaved people were transported from Western Africa to the Americas. Most of them were shipped to the West Indies, Central America, and South America. So, the causes of African slave trade, there are a few we're going to discuss. First one being that slavery had existed in Africa for centuries. It did not just happen during this slave trade that you know about. It had already existed. The spread of Islam into Africa ushered in the increase of slavery. Muslims believed that non-Muslim prisoners of war could be used as slaves. Second cause is the demand for Africans. So the death of 90% of the Native American population left a labor shortage in the Americas. So the Europeans saw the Africans as a great source of labor. The Africans had already had immunities to European diseases. They were experienced farmers. They were not likely to escape because, frankly, where could they go once in the Americas? They could not get back to Africa. And lastly, their dark skin made them easier to catch. The third cause is that Spain and Portugal led the way. Because they had already established sugar and tobacco plantations in South America by the 1600s, the Spanish and Portuguese are going to be the first to bring African slaves to the Americas. So take a look at this. Numbers. Between the years of 1500 and 1600, it's estimated that 300,000 slaves have been brought to the Americas. In between 1600 and 1700, it's said that about 1.3 million slaves had been brought to the Americas. And by the time the slave trade ended around 1870, more than 9.5 million slaves had been brought to the Americas. A forced journey. We already know this. The journey that the enslaved Africans took across the Atlantic Ocean, so from the west coast of Africa across the Atlantic Ocean to the Americas, that part of the journey is called the Middle Passage. And this was a part of the transatlantic trading network called the Triangular Trade. The European nations established a trade pattern known as a triangular trade and exported precious metals from the Americas. So here's that triangular trade. We have from Europe down to Africa. These are where the manufactured goods are going to be transported from Europe to Africa. From Africa all the way to the Americas, this is known as the Middle Passage. And slaves are going to be transported along this route across the Atlantic to the Americas. And then goods that were brought from the Americas all the way back to Europe are known as raw materials. And these raw materials are then going to be transformed into those manufactured goods, and so on and so forth. There's our triangle. So slavery in the Americas. Once a slave arrived in the Americas, they are auctioned off like cattle. They are not seen as human beings, unfortunately. They are seen as livestock. So they're going to be treated that way. Slaves are going to work on plantations or in mines, and they're going to suffer from great abuse and neglect. Slaves had little food. They lived in dreary huts. They're going to work long days, and they're going to suffer from beatings. Slavery was a lifelong condition and hereditary, meaning if a child is born to a slave, that child was also a slave. Consequences of slavery. Africa is going to lose whole generations of the strongest members. The European people are going to target those younger, very fit, very hardworking Africans. They are going to transport the strongest members of the African tribes that they capture to the Americas because they could make a pretty penny off of those people. Second consequence of slavery was that families are torn apart. They are never to be reunited. It's very unfortunate. One second you could be standing with your mother, the next second you could be torn away from your mother and brought on a boat to the Americas, and you would never see your mother again. It was very, very sad. Third consequence is that guns are going to be introduced into Africa, and those guns are going to lead to years of war and further loss. And the fourth consequence is that African culture that survived, it still influences America today. And the last consequence is that African Americans, they make up a substantial part of our population here in the Americas today. So not all the consequences of slavery are negative. There are some positives. All right, the last part, Standard 5E. You're going to be able to describe the growth of European nations, which include the Commercial Revolution and Mercantilism. So, Commercial Revolution. European maritime nations competed for overseas markets, colonies, and resources. A new economic system is going to emerge. We're going to have new money and banking systems created. Economic practices such as mercantilism are going to evolve, and colonial economies are going to be limited by the economic needs of the mother country. So what is mercantilism? It is an economic practice adopted by European colonial powers in an effort to become self-sufficient. It is based on the theory that colonies existed for the benefit of the mother country. So a very easy definition of mercantilism is right here. Mo money, mo power. The more money a country has, the more powerful it is. Mo money, mo power. A country's power depends on its wealth. If you have a lot of money, you have a lot of power. If you have little money, you have little power. So the more money you have, the more power you have. One last term we need to discuss is called a favorable balance of trade. So for a country to make money, they must have a favorable balance of trade. What does this mean? It means that you have to export more goods than you import, meaning you need to sell more goods than you buy. The ultimate goal is to become self-sufficient and not depend on other countries for anything. The ultimate goal is just to export your goods, to sell your goods, to make money, not to spend money. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are done with Standard 5. Incredible, wonderful, fantastic. Standards 2 through 5 are going to be on your first quarter test, which is coming up here shortly. You will be doing a review packet that covers all of Standards 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we will have at least one full class period to do review. So if you have any questions, maybe you're not sure about something, or you just want more clarification on a topic we have covered so far this year, please do not hesitate to ask. Stop by and see me, come to a stinger period, stay after school with me on Monday, or set up a time to stay after with me. I'm here to help you out. And I look forward to all of you kicking some tail on this test. All right, kids. See ya.